Hey, thanks for tuning into today's show. Now, I love today's show because we're focusing on hustle culture. We're going right at it. And we're talking specifically about why hustle culture leads to a culture in your organization that's not sustainable. We give you plenty of examples on why it's not sustainable. And then I tell you lots of stories of people who've been addicted to hustle culture and why it hasn't turned out well for them. And then finally, we give you some very clear tools on what you can do to build a sustainable culture that makes an unbelievable difference in your community. Hey, welcome to the Owolabi podcast. It's great to have you today. Now, one of the things I'm so excited to talk about is this problem that I think a lot of entrepreneurs, executives, and owners have. Look, we have a problem. It's a serious problem. It's the problem where you wake up at 3 a.m. and you expect everybody on your team to wake up at 3 a.m. It's where you answer emails at 11 p.m. and you expect everyone on your team to answer emails at 11 p.m. It's where you are chasing the next fad. We have to get on AI. We have to get on the metaverse. We need to create a newsletter. Everybody is moving, but no one is clear about where we're going. There's constant change, constant friction, constant movement, but yet very, very inconsistent vision. This is what I like to call the myth of urgency, where everything is urgent. And ultimately, you don't hit on the most important things. This is oftentimes referred to as the hammer problem, where if you've heard this before, if you have a hammer, literally every problem looks like a nail. And the same goes for urgency. If all you have is urgency, then every problem looks like a nail. Even people. And you will pound people into the ground because of your relentless pursuit of hustle, of grind, of constant urgency. This is a problem that even the best CEOs, executives, and entrepreneurs, especially entrepreneurs, fall for. And here's the challenge. Urgency might be able to get something done in a week or a month, but urgency never builds a legacy. Urgency never builds something that sustains. Urgency never builds a healthy lifestyle. Urgency never builds a business that can actually make a difference in a community. Urgency is always great for the short term, always terrible for the long term. We're going to talk about why. But first, it's important to talk about why people fall into the myth of urgency. I mean, if you're an entrepreneur, an executive, an owner, there's something in you that likes speed. I mean, you like flying high and moving fast. You feel better when things are moving. When you see people talking about retirement down the line and they're like, man, I just want to spend time golfing every single day for the rest of my life. I mean, it makes you want to poke your eyes out. You're like, I don't want that life. I want to matter. I want to move. I want to make things happen. If that's the kind of person that you are, then you are naturally disposed to hustle. You want to get things done. Urgency matters. You can get more things done in a day than most people can get done in a week because you are addicted and you are uncommonly good at focused energy. You can make things happen. In fact, you're probably pretty good in chaos. When things are chaotic, that's when you're at your best. So it's a natural disposition for you as an entrepreneur and executive and owner. I get it. And it's a natural thing. I'm very similar. I'm really good in chaos. I'm really good at running hard and running fast. I'm actually amazing in a crisis. When there's a crisis, that's when I come alive. And I'm like, it's my turn to shine. I totally get that. On the other side of it, the reality is you oftentimes think that because you're moving and because everybody is moving, that means you're chasing a vision. I mean, come on. The people who aren't moving seem to have no vision for their life. They don't know where they're going or why they're going there. They're fine with staying the same and they're great with things as they have always been. But that's not who you are. So the fact that you're waking up early and staying up late means that you're chasing some sort of vision. You're moving fast. You're living with purpose. And come on, who doesn't want to live with purpose? But the truth is, constant motion, constant urgency doesn't mean that you're living with vision. Urgency does not equate to vision. In fact, oftentimes urgency erodes vision, especially when you're living in urgency for far too long. And so the final truth is that you might be great at grinding, but grinding isn't great for you. If grinding isn't the way to build a company or urgency isn't the way to build a legacy, then what is? What is actually the thing that you need to do to keep things moving? Well, I'll give you a couple things right now. The first thing you got to understand is that motion without direction is wasted energy. It's important to be able to grind. It's really critical to be able to hustle. One of my favorite authors, Ryan Holiday, he says this. He says, yes, we hustle, but without the ability to rein it in, we will not last. Nothing left unchecked lasts for long. That means hustle is a fantastic servant. It's a terrible leader. Grinding is a lot like garlic. A little bit goes a long way, and a little bit too much is way too much. Without self-governance, the grind becomes self-sabotage. As I'm leading branches, I realized this years ago. One of the things that I was really good at was seeing opportunities and seizing opportunities. Again, I'm an entrepreneur, so I love hustling. I love hanging out with people who love to grind and love to push. It's my gear. It's what I enjoy doing. It's when I oftentimes feel most alive. And so every time a new opportunity came, I told my team, we can do this too. Like, we absolutely can do this. Well, there was a season when Branches was growing pretty quickly and people were hearing about the work we were doing with executives, owners, and entrepreneurs around the world. And we were getting a lot of requests to come help. And so I was like, let's do it all. Let's do it all. And so I was saying yes to everything, trying to figure out how to fit it in. Ultimately telling the people who mattered most no, like my family, like my kids, like my wife. And then over time, what I realized, in fact, in one particular year, I realized this, that we were spending all kinds of time on things that weren't bringing any results. We were running in 1,000 different directions and doing everything that we thought was fairly important, but not doing the things that were the most important things. And what I found at the end of the year was that we had a lot of energy spent, in fact, a lot of money spent, a lot of time spent, and very little to show for it. In fact, very little learning that came from all the effort that we put in. And that's when I realized that we were living in the myth of urgency. Everything was urgent, everything was now, and that was not the way to build a long-term legacy. And here's what's crazy about the myth of urgency. Urgency kills clarity. You see, your most important role as a leader is to do 3 distinct things. Listen to this, 3 distinct things, and I want you to write this down. The 3 distinct things are this. You have to establish clear direction, you have to secure necessary resources, and you have to develop talent rather than directing daily activities. That is your most important role as a leader. And so when you're hustling, you're not doing all of those things. You're simply just focused on the day-to-day, the hour-to-hour productivity of the organization. You're not thinking about the long-term sustainability. And here's what's crazy about urgency. Urgency collapses your ability to see into the next horizon. Your job as a leader is to make sure that you're looking out as far as you possibly can to try to understand what's coming next and to paint a picture of the future that your team can run after. And if you're constantly in this phase of urgency and worry, there's no way that you can see out a year from now, 2 years from now, 5 years from now, and even as the best organizations do, 30 years from now. And honestly, this is where a lot of people fail in leadership. Your job is to paint a really clear picture that people can get on board with. But because you're inundated with the urgent on a daily basis, you don't take the time to paint a picture of why what people are doing matters and why it's connected to the long-term future. You don't take the opportunity to tell people why their individual efforts matter and why it's connected to their long-term future. One of the best illustrations that I've seen for this is an illustration that has to do with making toys blindfolded. I'm going to tell it to you. This is how it feels to work in a culture that's all about hustle. So I want you to imagine that you are blindfolded and you have a supervisor who's standing next to you, and your job is to put together a Lego set. You have to put together a Lego house. And there's a bunch of pieces in front of you, but you're blindfolded, and all you can do is sort of feel the pieces. And then there's an actual Lego house, a completed Lego house in front of you, but you can't see it. All you can do is listen to your instructor. All you can do is listen to your supervisor, and he gives you or she gives you instructions on how to put this thing together. But all he is telling you is to go faster, to just try harder, to put it together and see what you get. And all he or she is giving you is negative feedback. Nope, that's not right. Nope, that's not right. Nope, that's not right. How quickly are you going to get frustrated? You can't see what you're trying to build, and all you have to do is just build faster and faster and faster. You'll start to feel like you're not making any progress. You don't know what you're doing. All you're doing is just doing things as fast as you can. Now, I want you to contrast that with another scenario. Now, let's say that your supervisor still has you blindfold, but what they do is they bring the model of the Lego house in front of you, and they let you touch it that lets you put your fingers on it. You're still blindfolded. You don't fully know how to do it, but they're allowing you to get a little bit more of a grasp on what you're actually trying to build. And then instead of constantly giving you negative feedback, they're giving you positive reinforcement. They're saying, that was great. Yep, that piece is good. Now do that a few more times. And they're giving you direction. They're giving you a little bit more intentionality. They're giving you a little bit more focused reinforcement. How are you going to feel about your ability to put together that Lego house now? Probably much, much better. You see, what happens in hustle culture is you spend far more time on activity and far less time on vision. And as a leader, it's your job to give people a very clear picture about what they're building and why, so that they can do it on their own without you there. They can build it because they're excited about what they're doing. They feel a sense of progress and a sense of purpose, and they understand what a finished product looks like. If you're constantly barking at people and constantly telling people to hurry because you're constantly in a hurry, suddenly what you'll have is a situation where people are constantly frustrated. They don't know where they're going. They don't know why they're doing it. And all they're doing is just working faster and faster and faster. Now, look, I'm a fan of history, and I love reading about historical events, especially moments that people should have known better, didn't learn, and ended up doing the same thing that people had done in past generations. When it comes to the myth of urgency, there are so many examples in history of people rushing to something when it's just not ready. One famous example is the Challenger disaster in the 1980s. There's the famous story of the O-rings and the idea that there's somebody literally within NASA that's saying, we should not launch. This is not ready. And him being overruled by people who had a deep sense that we have to do this today. Everyone is watching. We have to do this now. We have to do this now. Everyone is watching. It is ready to go, even though it wasn't ready. And it ended up in disaster on live TV. Another example is the Ocean Gate submarine. Some of you guys remember that. That's another example of where the build wasn't ready, the systems weren't ready, but they did it anyway, and it resulted in catastrophe. There's so many examples throughout history of people deciding that urgency is far more important than anything else. And instead of taking the time to pause and think through what they're doing, they get go fever. They start running as fast as they can in a particular direction, only to get to a place where they feel like, gosh, if I would have just paused for half a second, if I would have just waited one more day, if I would have reinforced things a little bit more, then things would have turned out much, much better. Urgency is great in moments. The grind is great in small moments, but it can turn into catastrophe if you don't regulate it. Look, talk about something crazy in human nature. This isn't just for businesses, for entrepreneurs, owners, and executives. I mean, this is just for humans. I mean, for those of you who are millennials and older, you remember Black Friday. And every year there's some sort of crazy story about some 40-year-old mom that died or some 80-year-old grandma that died on Black Friday because they showed up at Walmart to buy a TV and they got trampled by 15 200-pound dads trying to buy some 50% off toy for their kids. I mean, that deep sense of urgency. We got to get it now. We got to get it now. We got to do it now. Regardless of what's in my way, I'm going to get it now. Create something crazy in people. We're just a few hours later where you take a minute to step back and say, was it really worth all that urgency? The answer every single time is no. What the heck was I thinking? Why was I rushing so fast? Did it have to be done today? Did it have to be done right now? And let me just take a second and talk about why urgency hurts your long-term legacy. One of the things that happens in organizations that are addicted to hustle is that they operate in chaos constantly. There's just constant chaos. Everything is changing. You're always changing direction. You're always going after the newest thing. You're always doing a little bit extra when even extra isn't necessary. But you don't take the time to pause and ask, is this getting us towards our ultimate goal? Can we streamline? Can we do things a little bit simpler so that we can do the most important things as opposed to the most urgent things? These are organizations that operate constantly in whitewater. Everyone's just always on edge, and everyone's always rushing and rushing and rushing to the next thing. That also hurts the culture. Oftentimes, the only mantra in culture is fast and now and good. And what you haven't done is you haven't established norms of behavior. This is what good behavior looks like. This is who we are as a culture. So then what you do is you just simply hire people who can help the organization move faster, whether they're a good fit or not, whether their behaviors actually match the culture of the organization or not. You just get people who can move faster. And what happens is the only true north is speed. And organizations like that, oh my goodness, they can scale. Organizations like that, they can definitely scale. They can grow quickly, but they don't have sustainability. Oftentimes they collapse just as quickly as they grow. What's crazy is that this myth of urgency isn't just a business thing, right? It's a human thing. It's in all industries. It's in all sectors. Some of you know that I was a pastor for about a decade, and I'm, a teaching pastor now. But when I was a full-time pastor, I remember getting into it and hearing this story that was unbelievable. I couldn't believe it because I had never seen anything like it. Let me give you some context. So churches are kind of a different animal. So typically, churches will grow. Sometimes they'll go really quickly, but oftentimes they grow very slowly over time. But the opposite is true too. Churches tend to die and decline really slowly too. I mean, it's just one generation leaves after another, and you'll have a church that's in decline for 20 years. That's very, very normal. But for the first time, I saw a church literally go out of business like overnight. Had never seen it before. And what's more is that this church was huge. It had like 15 campuses across multiple states. This is in 2015, and for some of you who are familiar with evangelical Christianity, you know the story of Mars Hill. Now, Mars Hill was a church that grew unbelievably quickly, but because its culture wasn't clear, because it didn't have great infrastructure, because it was all built around one guy, ultimately, when something happened to that guy, and the whole hustle culture started to slow down and people forgot why they were doing what they were doing, ultimately, everything caught up to it and it went out of business, literally closed its doors overnight. 15 campuses, multiple states, gone in one weekend. Absolutely incredible. It's incredible because it's incredibly sad. Didn't have to happen. What that means is that you can be building something that you believe is absolutely incredible. It's supposed to do amazingly good things in the world. But if you get addicted to the myth of urgency, you've got to build it now and you've got to build it as fast as you possibly can, and you lose sight of your long-term horizon, as a leader, it's the beginning of the end. And it's just a matter of time before this isn't going to end well. So if you're like me, you have fallen victim to the myth of urgency. You have seen people who've fallen victim to the myth of urgency. You get what it's all about and why it can be so detrimental. You know that it's valuable in moments, but you also know that it's also hurtful if you can't rein it in. And so if you don't build your company, you don't build your church, if you don't build your community on this idea of urgency, then what do you build it on? What does long-term sustainability look like? Well, you can find it in one word: culture. Building your business, building your organization on a clear culture where people understand what right behavior is and why it matters. People understand where you're headed and the pace that you need to go. People recognize the value of rest as it helps continue to generate results. People understand the pace that you're going, and you don't throw things on the wall just to see if it sticks, and you don't do everything that comes across your desk because you feel like you have to. You're very disciplined and focused, and you build a culture of people who are disciplined and focused. People who don't do everything. They just do less things better. At Branches, we teach this all the time. We teach that there's actually 3 non-negotiables that you have to have on your team to make sure that you're building a culture that's sustainable and not built on hustle. The first thing you have to do is you have to have clear values that demonstrate who you are as an organization and what behaviors are most important. How do we behave in situations that are difficult? What are our priorities? Who's first? Who's second? Who's third? What are the things that really govern our actions? You have those clear values written out, and you hire people according to their ability to live out those values naturally. And you let people go according to their ability to live out those values naturally. As the leader, you've taken the time to articulate those values on your team. The second thing you do is you have very clear 90-day goals. Some people call them quarterly rocks. You can call them whatever you want to. But every 90 days, People have a very clear window of what they're supposed to do and how they're supposed to do it. They understand that they have a lot of leeway into when they get those things done. They just have to get it done within 90 days. And that governs how much rest they get. That governs how much effort they put in. They can decide how much they want to hustle, but they know they have to get something done within those 90 days. And the last thing you do is you have weekly check-ins. This is super important. The best organizations have weekly meetings. Sometimes they're an hour, sometimes they're just a check-in, sometimes they're longer. But the goal in those meetings is to make sure as a leader that you are identifying obstacles for your team and removing those obstacles. What's getting in their way of being able to accomplish their goal in 90 days? You do whatever you can to help support your leadership team. So ultimately, if you're leading at a high level, what you're doing is you're setting a really clear vision. This is where we're going. This is what we want to accomplish. This is who we are. You're giving people a chance to set those 90-day goals and saying, this is what I want to accomplish this year. And you're making sure it's in alignment with the entire organization. And then you're having weekly check-ins with your team to make sure that they're doing what they need to do. And if they can't, and if they're not doing a great job, you're stepping in to help remove obstacles and make their path clear. You're giving them encouragement. You're giving them support. Sometimes you're giving them challenge, but you're giving them what they need to continue to move faster and to move forward. Now, let me give you one more thing to make sure that you understand the value of a sustainable culture, sustainable speed. It's one term that I learned years ago that I think is absolutely critical. It's learning the difference between a clean no and a dirty yes. Let me explain. You see, a clean no is where you recognize that something comes across your desk and it doesn't quite fit with where you're supposed to go as an organization, or doesn't quite fit with your time that you've allocated to do a particular thing. Maybe it looks good, maybe it feels good, maybe it sounds good, but it's not in the plans. The best thing you can do as a leader is to give a clean no and say, no, we're not going to do that right now. No, we're not going to take advantage of that opportunity. No, that's not part of our annual plan. No, that's not part of our quarterly plan. You're very clear about what you're going to do, and you give a very clear no. Oftentimes, people don't give clear no's, and they give dirty yeses. They say, yeah, we can get that done. Yeah, we can absolutely cover that. Yeah, we can make sure that we'll do that, even though you have no idea how it's actually going to get done. You're giving a dirty yes, and then you're going to hope that it all comes together, and you're hoping that your team can squeeze out some extra time and some extra effort to make it work. Oftentimes early in an organization's life, they'll do that. And that can work for a little bit. But after a while, you got to give way more clean no's and far fewer dirty yeses. That's when you know that you're maturing as an organization. Look, if you're an entrepreneur, executive, owner, founder, and you're having a hard time locating the brakes, you're having a hard time giving clean no's, your team is telling you that they're burning out, you've got good people that are leaving because you haven't set a clear direction, or you've set a clear direction, but you lack consistency. If you're challenged with the myth of urgency, look, you're not alone. In fact, Branches specializes in helping people, executives, owners, entrepreneurs who want to build something that matters, want to build something that lasts. They want to make a difference in their community, and they want to change lives in the process. We specialize in helping people just like you develop systems, develop standards, develop benchmarks so that you can make sure that you're running as fast as you can, but only running as fast as you can in a sustainable way. The key is to do less better, and to surround yourself with people who can teach you and show you what that actually looks like for you and your organization. And so if you haven't figured out that Branches Worldwide is a support for you, we'd love to be able to give you more information. You go to branchesworldwide.org, or if you go to wearebranches.com, it's a great place to learn how we can help you and your company develop systems to guard against the myth of urgency. We work with leaders all over the globe, helping them do exactly what I just taught you. The best part about all this is that you start to prioritize your own growth. You start to recognize that your growth as a person, your character, your skills, growing you is as important as growing the business. And when you start to resist the myth of urgency, you start to reprioritize the things that matter most. Your character, your family, your knowledge, your ability to make clear-headed decisions and lead your organization towards long-term sustainability.